On the trail radio here, just wanting to do a pretty quick video about how I use some of my radios. More specifically, the UV5G Baofeng GMRS radio. So whenever you use it, it does come completely stock with the first GMRS 1 to 22 channels, which means if I was to go to channel 22, it goes to channel 22. That is how I have the rest of my radios set up as well, as you see over there, except for those two, which are operating on the CB band. But that being said, if you look right onto here, after the GMRS 22, it will show a plus and minus sign. The reason it does that, it shows that I do have an offset. And if you look on here, you will see it says Cincy 15. If I change it from there, let me switch off of channel 2, somebody seems to be using it. Cincy 16, Cincy 17, all the way up to 22. That is because, obviously, the area that I use it the most is in southern Ohio, and most of the repeaters I use are in Cincinnati or roughly within 50 miles of Cincinnati. So, if I wanted, I also have it set up to the rest of the state. I have a repeater in every single city in Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia. It is fairly easy to get access to a lot of these repeaters. All you have to do is go onto mygmrs.com and go to the repeater map. Now, a lot of repeaters are open, but you just need to request access. Now, a lot of the people there don't actually have an issue with you using their repeaters, as long as you follow the FCC rules and regulations. So, if you look on here, where I have it scanning, I have a bunch, and I mean a bunch, of repeaters listed in here, so that no matter where I go in Kentucky, Ohio, or West Virginia, I can hit any of those repeaters. You may ask, how do you use some of those repeaters? Because a lot of people seem to have trouble and issue trying to get repeaters on other channels. I can tell you what I did. So, if you were to go to 030, which is the repeater number 8, otherwise known as 22 with an offset, then you can actually go into saving the radio, and you can save the memory to another channel. So if I was to hit the menu and go down to a channel that I know for a fact is empty, which you can tell because instead of saying CH, it will be an empty channel, like 105. You save that channel and you will now have a 462.725 repeater channel saved in. From there, you can go to the receive tone, the transmit tone, and make it go from there about how you want to continue on with the radio. In other words, you can have multiple of the same frequency saved to multiple channels, and then you can mess with the tones. The only problem that you will face with that is that you will not be able to save names on there. But if you download the UV5G programming software other than Chirp, just because some people do have problems with Chirp, then you can just name them. Now, something to note on here is that the first 30 channels cannot be messed with. You can go to GMRS 1 to 22, and you can add tones to them, but you cannot change those frequencies. Considering this does not operate outside of the GMRS band anyhow, obviously it can receive all the way down from 130 upwards of the 200 range, but it cannot transmit anywhere outside of the FRS and GMRS band. That being said, though, it is perfectly acceptable for how I use it. If I was to go hiking, off-roading, or any of those other sorts, where I may not have cell phone service, this may be my only other means of communication. It should never be your main means of communication. You also will likely, if you are going off-roading, have a mobile unit installed into your truck, Jeep, or sedan, depending on what you're doing, and you'll be able to talk much further and clearer than you would with a handheld. But that being said, this being a last-ditch effort is perfectly acceptable. But if any of these radios are more your speed, then obviously you have the UV5G, mainly for GMRS. You have the Motorola MT2000, has 48 channels, scanning features, and is very, very good at transmitting. You have the HT1000 Motorola, also very good at transmitting. You have the Baofeng UV5R, which we will get to in a minute, and my CB radios, but nobody uses CB radios anymore. If you are in a desperate situation that is in no way going to be able to be fixed other than to be used in a ham radio, transmitting outside of the ham bands, you better have a pretty good reason for doing it if somebody has to come and save you. That being said, I do have it unlocked just to listen in to the frequencies. And if I was ever in a scenario that was a life or death scenario, then I would be able to transmit on those frequencies. Not legally, of course, but you would understand that if I'm in a life or death situation, you're not worried about the FCC rules and regulations. There has been multiple times where people have called out for help using a ham radio that was transmitting outside of the band, and people have responded. Using your best judgment, you can use this if you are in a dire situation. That being said, if you have the ability, always use a GMRS specific radio. But bottom line, how I use the UV5G is that no matter where I go in Ohio, let's say Akron, for example, or if I was in Columbus, then I will be able to reach a repeater in those cities. I've already confirmed it. I've been around the state, and I have other ones for Kentucky. The way I personally have it set up is I have the Ohio channels listed first, and then the Kentucky channels, and after the Kentucky channels, have the West Virginia channels listed. You have 7 digits to name your repeaters, so it should be fairly easy to tell where you're going. The only problem is if people want you to call the repeater a very specific thing, then you might want to name it as that. But the way I personally have it set up is it tells you the state and the city. Unless you're in Ohio, then it just tells you the city. Akron, West Virginia, Wheelersburg. Or, if you're a real jabroni, you could depend on the CB band only on channel 7. That doesn't have very many people on it.